Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Kindly take your seats and allow us to begin our session with William Kentridge. Thank you for coming to Tel Aviv and congratulations for receiving the Dan David Prize. I would like to start off by reading to you a small text that was written almost a year ago when we started the search, not me, but the Dan David Prize Board started the search for the Dan David Prize in the Present Time Dimension for 2012 for plastic arts. It was not written about Mr. Kentridge. It was written in a search for someone. And it goes like this. The Dan David Prize in 2012 in the Present Time Dimension will be granted to an active artist in the fields of painting, sculpture, photography, video art, installation, one or more, I must add, or all of these, particularly or in their combination. These arts, some of which are ancient and some contemporary, offer human life a dimension of extra value which is not confined to the reality of actual material, corporeal, physical, social, and political terms. The free zone of art may transgress actual borders to express imagination and fantasy, and it may disregard difference and dissension to exhibit wholeness and integrity. Art is not obliged to pay respect to confining boundaries, walls, and locked gates, which abound in our lived, experienced reality. It makes and breaks to arrive at new knowledge and experience. It experiments with materials and images to arrive at new ways of seeing and thinking. Art affords human spirit an opportunity to realize its sense of humanness and transcendence in all its aspects and performances, in sublime joy and deep grievance, in celebratory hope and deadly despair, in cold criticism and exuberant enthusiasm. Although being famously disinterested and non-practical, works of art have the power to project a voice which may impact real life. They may at times exit the ivory studio or formal gallery display to mingle and merge with social reality. Nevertheless, from this free and autonomous zone, art is not obliged to the reproduction of the system, any system, or hegemonical institutional arrangement. Artists and their works have presented human society over history and contemporarily with a mirror and a lamp with which to regard itself and an opportunity for self-reflection in a manner which is liberated from stereotypes of identity and location and from fixed and fixated conventional values. May I add, frozen. Thus, in its moments of grace and courage, art may significantly transform and revolutionize not merely its own history and tradition, but also the self-concept of human beings and their self-recognition, of the value of their actions, their thoughts, and the significance of their lived presence in the world. This was not written about William Kentridge. Amazingly, I can't say unexpectedly, but at the time there was a search. There needn't have been a search. It seems this was written for Mr. Kentridge. I now ask Professor Itamar Rabinovich to come and greet this session and Mr. Kentridge. Professor Rabinovich.
Thank you, Hannah, Mrs. Gabriela David, Ariel David, Mr. William Kentridge, Dr. Stanwix, who is Mrs. Kentridge, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here in my capacity as chairman of the Dan David Foundation. Charles Dickens famously wrote, "These were the best of times, these were the worst of times." The best of times because the Dan David Prize is flourishing, and events like this, bringing an artist of William Kentridge's stature not just to receive the prize, but to communicate with the Israeli public and the Tel Aviv University community, is exactly what the vision of the prize had in mind when Dan David came to establish it. the worst of time because a few months ago we lost Dan David prematurely. This was a huge loss to all of us who were his friends, to all of us who were beneficiaries of his vision and generosity, and obviously to his small and tightly knit family. But Gabriela, his wife, and Ariel the son are committed to the vision of Dan, to the prize, and the work of the prize goes on. But the ceremony, the events, and life in general without Dan is not what it used to be. 12 years ago, Dan came to my office when I was president of Tel Aviv University, and he had the complete vision of the prize that he had in mind, the 3 time dimensions, past, present, and future, the relationship between these time dimensions, and he had the wherewithal as a very successful businessman to endow the prize and to endow it in perpetuity. And together with the team at the university, we were able to put it together, to put it to work. There are actually quite a few large prizes in the world, but to have a prize that acquires a reputation, a stable and a lingering reputation, you need year in and year out to have an accountable and a transparent process to make good selections, and in time the prize acquires the reputation that it deserves to have, as is the case with the prize. As I mentioned earlier, the purpose of the prize is not only to recognize talent and contribution in science, art, social responsibility, but also to bring to Israel individuals of the stature of William Kentridge, and to enable the Israeli public to enjoy their company and their creativity, and to interact with them, as is going to be the case in the next hour or so. And it is so, again, with a sense of loss and grief over the passing away of Dan David, and with a sense of satisfaction at the ongoing work and success of the prize, that I give you William Kentridge. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. William Kentridge does not require an introduction, but deserves celebration, as we are gathered here for today. So please bear with me, William, and all our guests for a few minutes before we hear him talk to us. William Kentridge's work of several decades has gifted the world with drawings and prints, sculptures, tapestries, projected drawings for which he is currently best known, and which heightened the critical sense of his invention of non-traditional media and the famous debate over automatic writing and automatism, all of which received a plethora of awards and citations worldwide and are prized so-called possessions of museums, galleries, and collectors. Making meaning of Kentridge's expressive, narrative, and dramatic work is a subject he himself elaborated in several of his museum talks and performances, remarking on the human capacity, and indeed the human desperate cling or quest for meaning, the way we desperately hang on to meanings with what we are familiar with, albeit, and as we see the decomposing or discomposing of meaning in front of our very eyes as the projected drawings move on to fragment and reduce the image. Thus, his work can also be seen as a visual theory, a theory of interpretation in visuality, what may be called a theory of the generosity of viewing. The work, it is not me, the horse is not mine, elaborates in the section called Elaborate, how much of the outside world do we need inside us to make sense of it? I'm not totally quoting. Do we have the generosity of viewing, he says, to stop seeing a shape, a face, a form, a horse, even when the mere stick, the single line of a hobby horse, is all that remains in the image? Can we remove ourselves from the pressure for meaning, the desperate latching on to a form even as it starts to disappear, as a hand clings onto a saving banister to see the whole form of Rosinante in the single stick? In another talk about this work, he says, I would repeat my trust in the contingent, the inauthentic, the whim, the practical as strategies for finding meaning. Thus, with his invented technique of recording his drawing and erasing, his cutting and assembling, of his walking and stalking an image, he shares with us his sensibilities of the flexibility of space and movement, and takes us on a journey of interpretation, which is at the same time a reflexive, intellectual, and an emotional, sensational battle against fixedness and good ideas, and of liberating ourselves from those emissaries of the world outside lodged immutably within us. Indeed, he problematizes our notion of the fixed image, frozen in time and holding its pose as if saved from decay in spite of occasionally calling for memento mori, propels us into the notion of the world as a process and creates sensitivity for fragmentation as an essential factor of meaning-making. While other forms of palimpsests, a concept most widely recurrent in critical discourse regarding Kentridge, may hint at an act of pentimento, Kentridge writes in his introductory note to Felix in Exile, in the same way that there is a human act of dismembering the past, there is a natural process in the terrain through erosion, growth, dilapidation that also seeks to blot out events. Keeping traces of the previous moment and of acts of erasure and fragmentation are far from pentimento. These are pure gestures to genealogical ruptures and emergences and emergencies. Thank you. Please.
Thank you.